Hello. Our story begins in a contest within the Tower of the Invisible Hand. Obi-Wan was thrown to the ground and Skywalker pressed an offensive against the aging Count Dooku. His blade parried and defended each coming strike with relative ease. It was at the end of the Clone War, and this right here would be the defining moment of the war. Dooku swung his arms wide and quickly shuffled up the stairs backwards. As he moved up, he could see Kenobi on the other side of the staircase, ascending and cutting through super battle droids. But Count Sereno saw no reason to sacrifice his potential victory to Anakin. He spun his lightsaber around, parrying Kenobi before shoving Anakin back to the ground. Obi-Wan prepared a vicious strike that could finally end Dooku's side of the war, but there was no time for that. Dooku lifted the Jedi Master off the ground and flung him across the room. He smashed into the banister, and the walk was crushed, forcing down on top of Obi-Wan. Anakin got up from the ground and charged in, throwing his lightsaber aggressively at Dooku, who slyly stepped away, parrying the strike and flinging Anakin's weapon into the wall. He could sense Skywalker's anger rise. It's what his master wanted, but now, for the first time since their rivalry had started, it's what Dooku himself wanted. He watched Anakin's tone change with the defeat of Obi-Wan, and now Dooku would certify his victory and change the trajectory of everything, this time with his own intention fulfilled. Dooku was thrown back around, and he could see the fury of Skywalker bearing down on him. He ducked out of the way and slipped a kick that would have thrown him from the catwalk they were on. As this duel progressed, he could sense Palpatine's own satisfaction. It was like a cloud blurring his vision, but he cut through it with precision. Anakin pushed Dooku towards the caved-in part of the walkway, which Dooku handled with focus. He swung his blade down, forcing his and Anakin's weapon into the railing, and when he looked up, an elbow clipped him in the jaw, and he stumbled back. As he did, Dooku looked at his advantage, and took it. Skywalker's growing rage would be of advantage to Dooku. He told Anakin that he had fury and he had anger, but he didn't use it. His weaknesses would expose him. Skywalker launched his weapon at Dooku, who parried immediately before shoving Anakin backwards and backflipping off the broken walkway. He could see that Anakin was now relishing in his apparent command over the battlefield. Skywalker spun his lightsaber in his hand and leapt forward, swinging down as he did. Dooku threw his lightsaber forward and dropped his hand out from under it. Anakin's swing crashed down into the ground, and Dooku drove his lightsaber into Anakin's hip with his non-dominant hand, catching his blade as he did so. Anakin slipped down, but he still found the strength to swing at Dooku, a cut that would have removed both of his legs. Dooku came back to the moment. He almost got a little too ahead of himself. He looked to Sidious with a wink, and then back to Skywalker. He told the boy to use his fury, to use his strength and strike him down. Anakin rushed Dooku, to use lightning to shield himself. Anakin was blinded by the light, but he defended himself before leaping at Dooku again. Their blades interlocked. This was the moment, victor or loser. He dropped himself back and blocked two immediate strikes before driving the power counter that removed Anakin of his lightsaber and of his robotic arm. Dooku looked down and pitied him, before electrocuting Skywalker until he was left unconscious. As he was doing this, he locked eyes with Sidious, who started to get impatient. Palpatine tried to release himself from his binds as he demanded answers from Dooku, but the second he used the Force to try and free himself, he was electrocuted by the chair. Dooku shook his head, waving his finger from side to side. Anakin and Obi-Wan were unconscious. The Count contacted Grievous and told him to abandon Coruscant for Stargon Prime. Grievous responded with excitement. Sidious inside the chair, using his Sith voice, demanded to know what he had done, or what he was planning. Dooku tilted his head with a confused but angry and somehow yet even maddening smile. He asked if Palpatine didn't like being lied to, or better yet, not knowing the truth, or the end of a plan. Did he like it? Sidious told Dooku that as soon as he got out of this chair, he would slaughter him, and make his death the most painful one the galaxy would have ever seen, and would ever see. Tyrannus got into Palpatine's face and shook his head. This was his destiny now. Dooku controlled the rest of their lives, and he planned on making sure it all went according to his plan, no one else's. He reminded Palpatine of the first rule of the Sith. Sidious tried to pull back, but he couldn't, as his body, like Anakin's, was filled with electricity. When Palpatine was left unconscious, Grievous walked in with his Magna Guards. Dooku reminded him of the plan, and the droid general nodded with anticipation. He clenched his fist, telling Dooku that the galaxy would bow before them, and Dooku just bobbed his head slowly and silently. When the three of them woke up on Stargon Prime, they were all in one main chamber. Their arms were tied behind their backs, their legs tied to the floor, and each of these restraints were force prohibitors. If any one of them tried to do something, like Palpatine did on the invisible hand, they would suffer. Dooku wasn't in the chamber when they woke up though, so Anakin quickly asked Palpatine and Obi-Wan if they were alright, and they nodded, asking where they were or how they got here. No one knew. Obi-Wan asked Anakin if he was okay. His forearm had been removed during the previous engagement, and he had forgotten. Skywalker told Obi-Wan that he was a lot better than Dooku would be. As the last word left his mouth, the floor electrified, and they all cried out in agony until the doors opened, and their electrocution stopped. Dooku smiled with a sense of youthful energy. He asked them how their naps were with a delusional tone. He stepped into the room, tapping the floor, telling Skywalker that it wasn't very kind to insult the host. He sat on the steps that led into the room as he said this. Obi-Wan asked him what he wanted from all of this, and Dooku asked Sidious, as he called him by that name, what he wanted from all of this. Silence filled the air, as all eyes were drawn to Palpatine. Dooku rolled off the step and walked to Anakin, getting down beside his face and asking if he knew that his most trusted non-Jedi ally was a Sith Lord. Not just any Sith Lord, but the one who attempted to kill Senator Amidala numerous times, the one who had started the Clone War, who had helped Ahsoka get removed from the Jedi Order, who had called the shot that got Fives killed, or, oh, what else? Got Maul set up enough to drag Ahsoka away from him yet again? Isn't it funny how these little things work out? Anakin's anger and fury slipped from his body as he looked at Palpatine, asking if it was true, and the Sith Lord tried to find an answer. He was just as shocked as anyone else, that Dooku would be so erratic. No one had seen Dooku like this before, not even Palpatine. Dooku looked at Obi-Wan and sighed. He told him years ago on Geonosis, and Palpatine was right there, mentoring Anakin on how to not be a Jedi. What a shame. Kenobi had such promise, but never looked further than Sith equal bad, so Sith must lie, right? Very barbaric. Qui-Gon always spoke so highly of Obi-Wan. It was a shame that he had no concept of what true admission was. They could have been allies, or ended the war together, and now, nothing. Dooku then sat back down. He didn't have anything else to say. A deafening silence covered their minds, and Obi-Wan asked what Dooku wanted from them. The Count looked to the walls of the room, moving from corner to corner to corner, before finally revealing that he wanted his life back. He was fed a lie, one that enslaved him for 13 years. He gave up everything he had to transform the galaxy into a better place. He wanted to be the saving grace, and the truth is, he destroyed everything. As he had foreseen, not with the Force, but with the natural order of things, Palpatine would rise to the role of Emperor. Dooku's own dreams for a free galaxy would exist, but it would be in his worst nightmares that they did. There would be no Jedi, no mega corporations, and no Republic, but there would be an Emperor, a military doctrine, and a galaxy enslaved by the Sith. The two Jedi looked to each other as Palpatine spoke up, telling Dooku that the war was lost anyways. Holding them here, or killing them, wouldn't fix anything. His life belonged to him, because without the Sith, Dooku was nothing and no one. All of his economic status came from abandoning the Order, but all of his political status came from Palpatine's knowledge and help. Without it, he would have never had a word worth speaking. Dooku laughed a bit. Sure, in Palpatine's deluded mind, there was only him and him alone, but this wasn't Palpatine's story anymore. Dooku narrowed his eyes, and told them that they would sit here with him and watch. He stopped and took a moment before revealing his plan. They eyed him without blinking, and he finished his statement. They would watch the end of the galaxy. The Separatist Council and government were already dead. Grievous and his droid armies were given control over everything and anything. Whatever Grievous decided was best would be. The galaxy surely would enter a dark age, and that's what Dooku wanted. To upset the status quo of everything and silence the legacy of the Sith and the Jedi with one swift strike. There would be varying reactions from the individuals who heard the message, but the one who piped up first was Palpatine, telling him that he wouldn't have the gall, and Dooku nodded. He wouldn't have when he had first met him. He wouldn't have before he was forced to betray Ventress. He wouldn't have before Qui-Gon's death. He wouldn't have if he didn't know that Palpatine wanted to use that fight on the Invisible Hand to kill him. Palpatine asked what he had gained from any of this, and he watched Dooku's back slump over ever so slightly. There was nothing to gain from all of this. He lost everything. His entire life was thrown away in service to one master or another. He didn't get to live the life he wanted to with the Jedi, though he had to admit, that it was considerably better than the life he had been living here. As a Sith, he had no one but Asajj, and she was taken away from him. That was his friend, the only true one he had, and now she was dead. Dooku explained that he had nothing to gain from any of this. They all had something to lose, though. Obi-Wan attempted his diplomacy skills, suggesting that there were other ways around this, and Dooku cut him off. There was nothing more that could be said. He had an opportunity to join him on Geonosis, and decided not to. He would live with the consequences of his actions, and that was final. Dooku got up and left the room. The two Jedi and the Sith Lord settled in. There'd be no escape, and the silence in the room was deafening. Obi-Wan could feel Anakin's anger, and he tried to quell it, but there would be nothing to stop that. He turned to Palpatine and yelled at him. Sidious sat silently, wondering why everyone felt the need to yell at him lately. He just blankly stared at Anakin as his outburst continued on and on. When it finished, Palpatine told him that he wasn't as special as he made himself out to be. This was obviously a bit petty from Palpatine, because he had been focused on giving Skywalker the reins of the Sith, but that wasn't an ego boost he was willing to give right here and right now. Obi-Wan had leaned his head against the wall while Anakin and Palpatine bickered. He just wanted to help, but Anakin wouldn't hear it, and truthfully, despite his better judgment, he couldn't help but accept those terms. Anakin's anger was validated, because his friend and mentor just revealed that he attempted to kill his wife, the one Obi-Wan quote-unquote didn't know about multiple times. Obi-Wan just closed his eyes and tried to find harmony as silence again washed over the room. The three would be fed at some point, but they wouldn't see Dooku until the next day. He was within the Spire, as the Stargon Prime prison was referred to, and he just simply avoided the three he captured until he felt like saying something. Outside of the prison, General Grievous was smashing any sense of civilization in the galaxy. Dooku told him to do what he wanted to, after killing the Separatist Council and government, so for him, his greatest foe was the Jedi and the Outer Rim sieges, which he had every intention to blow up in the Jedi's faces. The war was going terribly for the Separatists, and Grievous was disappointed that the reserve fleet wasn't revealed to him sooner, but Dooku told him that they'd been building it just in case they lost the war, or the Battle of Coruscant. They didn't make Grievous aware of it just in case he was captured again, which, fair enough. The droid general released unrelenting assaults across a multitude of planets in the Outer Rim, pushing the Jedi back almost immediately. What had initially been standoffish battles between clones and Jedi became overwhelming odds for a severely depleted clone army that was suffering from assaults of an overbearing Separatist reserve army. On Coruscant, the Jedi had made a move on the Senate, especially with Palpatine's disappearance, and they aided Mas Amedda, the acting leader of the Republic, with how to combat the rise of the Separatist insurgency. When they realized the opposing government was wiped out, they feared that Palpatine, Obi-Wan, and Anakin were also killed. They would need to approach the rising hostility with everything they had. Inside the Spire at Stargon Prime, the three were awoken when the doors opened and Dooku walked in, with a stream of light of the hall blasting their tired eyes. Palpatine didn't sleep much, mostly because of the way he killed his master. This was the first time he had truly slept in years, because what else could he do? The cell was dark until a deep crimson light emanated from the walls, and Dooku told his prisoners to wake up. Dooku again sat on the steps of the cell. He looked from Jedi to Sith, and he asked them how they slept. Anakin lunged forward, getting restricted as he did, and then slipping back down, as Dooku waved his finger once more. He told Skywalker that he'd be wise to just listen. The hint of madness was covering not just Dooku's voice, but now his eyes and his facial expressions. His mind was lost, and they were paying the price for it, seemingly. Dooku asked Anakin if he felt his life had any meaning. Did it? Skywalker tried to speak up, and every time he did, he was cut off by Dooku saying, "Did it?" He would eventually repeat the same static conversation type with Palpatine and Obi-Wan. Despite him finding a new energy, something more tantalizing was torturing his mind. Dooku's elbow landed on the step behind him, and he told them that he felt like his life had no meaning. The three of them looked to each other out of confusion, and then confirmation as he told them why. Tyrannus was a nothing, a cog for a meaningless war in a meaningless life, for a meaningless conflict between two ancient religions that hated each other over different interpretations of the same thing. He pointed at Palpatine, as if he were in a drunken stupor, and told him that he was angry at everything all the time for no reason, and that was tiring to be around. He then tilted his head to Obi-Wan and pointed at him, repeating the same line, but instead of anger, it was hopeful. Then Anakin Skywalker. He scoffed at him, turning a blind eye because at the end of all of it, Dooku hated Skywalker with every fiber of his being. Silence rocked the room again. No one knew what to do, say, or think. What exactly were they supposed to do, say, or think? They were trapped with their enemy, and their captor seemed to be losing his mind. Dooku picked up on this, and he told them that there was nothing for them to do or say. This was a life they had given him. In a way to deny his own responsibility for his own actions, his blame shifted outwards. He told Palpatine that without his false promises, and Sidious cut him off, rising up with his cuffs and telling Dooku to stop talking already. There was no point to his ramblings. His death was coming and he was frightened like a child. Except children of the dark side do not fear, they conquer, so he was a wasted soul pondering the existentialism of the end of his life. Dooku nodded his head. Ah, that he was. All in service of the higher power, had he forfeited everything, and wasn't coming to grasps with what was, very clearly, the end of his journey. Obi-Wan tried to rectify this. He tried to tell Dooku that it wasn't too late. He could make good of his intentions and fight the darkness within. His life wasn't over until he believed it was. Despite the time being at the end of the road, he was the only one in control over how much time he spent and where he spent it. Dooku shook his head. He had his control now that those who deserved to pay the most suffered. He got up and stumbled out of the room before the door shut, and silence rolled over the three once more. Instead of basking in it, after about an hour, Palpatine would pipe up, asking the two Jedi for their opinion on the matter. Anakin told Palpatine to eat the broadside of a cannon, and Obi-Wan shifted up and spun himself around. The two of them were facing each other from opposite sides of the room. He asked Palpatine what he would gain from that. The Sith Lord looked down and didn't really know. He was bored to death. They'd been in here for what seemed to be days, and they hadn't interacted with anyone aside from Dooku twice, who was getting more incoherent the more he came in. Obi-Wan told the Sith that his tortured student was reeling from the suffering he had finally consciously realized Palpatine inflicted on him. Palpatine rubbed his chin, listening to Kenobi speak. Something was so odd about this forced interaction. Sidious hated everything, but despite him still hating Obi-Wan, here, in this moment, he needed something. But he couldn't do anything. He had tried to escape, and that was most of the reason for him sleeping. He got electrocuted and sent to the Shadow Realm again. So, Palpatine gestured forward. What good did that do? Obi-Wan rolled his eyes and leaned back against the wall. Dooku had always wanted to live a life of conscience, like Qui-Gon. The difference is, Qui-Gon would have never joined Sidious. He wanted what was best and always found it through the Jedi Order. Dooku tried to go the easy route, and through it, he realized that all of his life had been a waste. Anakin's ears perked up at hearing that. A waste? He questioned Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan nodded. He was just trying to interpret it. He always observed, and he had heard a lot of stories about Dooku after joining the Council, and especially when he was Qui-Gon's apprentice. He understood who Dooku thought he was supposed to be. He lived a life of trying to be someone he wasn't. Despite his motives and ideas being at the helm of his decisions, in the end, they were never his. Always manipulated, contorted, or controlled by someone else. In such case, it would be Yoda, the Jedi, and eventually Sidious. Palpatine relished in this for a moment, but truth be told, since there was no way of knowing how things would end for the three of them, most specifically himself, he couldn't really relish in it. Palpatine wasn't afraid of death, but he also wanted more for himself. He wanted the power to control his own destiny. He just basked in it for a moment, questioning himself mentally, until Obi-Wan's voice cut through the cloud of his mind. He asked Sidious, as he called him by name, if he had lived his life fully, or would he become deranged when he was knocking on death's doorsteps like Dooku. Palpatine wanted people to suffer, but he only cared about their torment in relation to him. If they suffered so he could grow in strength, rise in power, or feel satisfaction, then it was all the worth it. Killing his father was satisfying. Torturing Maul was growth for him in strength. Killing Plagueis for his rise in power. And here, because he had nothing to benefit from any of this, for the first time did he feel no satisfaction for his actions. The three of them could feel it. Grievous's droid armies were slaughtering thousands by the hour. Whether they be Republic troopers, local militia, clones, Jedi, government officials, or citizens, there was death everywhere. Typically, as Palpatine had throughout the war, he relished in it, but here he couldn't, because there was nothing for him to gain from all of their deaths. Sidious, Obi-Wan, and Anakin looked to each other, and they returned to their silence. They would continue to speak to each other about deeper topics like the previous one for the next couple of weeks. They wouldn't have any interaction with anyone. They would be permitted to leave for calls of nature and bathing, but it was done under strict supervision with their force restraining cuffs. During this time, they would only interact with sentry droids and each other, as Dooku had fallen ill and wasn't speaking to anyone. During these few weeks and eventually months, the galaxy would start its descent into darkness. The Jedi had activated the strength of their full order, deploying any and everyone available to the front lines to protect the Republic. They did well, initially, but battle droids had one advantage over the clones, aside from numbers. They didn't need rest. They could recharge quickly, they could resupply faster, and they didn't have morale. The fighters of the Republic had their morale stripped from them, and the galaxy slipped further into a new dark age. Droid forces crushed any sign of resistance in the mid-rim, and they established a beachhead, figuratively speaking, on Kid and Nemodia within the core. They were weeks away from crushing the rest of the Republic. The Jedi Order had lost counselors, and they lost thousands of warriors in this fighting. Everything was as desperate as it could be. The only benefit was the droids were completely controlled by Grievous, and they were running out of troopers exponentially. The only reason they hadn't won yet is because the Republic could legitimately fortify the core, whereas the rest of the galaxy was continuously losing contact with it. It was horrible, and inside the spire at Stargon Prime, the three Force Adepts waited for Dooku to return, if he ever would. By this point, their dynamic had shifted, because it was forced to shift. Anakin hated Palpatine, but Obi-Wan and Sidious had found a common ground. Not that they liked each other at all, well, maybe a little, because their personalities meshed well, when it wasn't all hope or all die everyone die, but their conversations started initially deep, but they grew outwards because what else could they do? Anakin was worried sick, literally and figuratively, over Padme, and if she had survived the siege of the core or whatever else was happening in the galaxy, because they could feel it. Obi-Wan was comforting. Palpatine didn't know how to be, so it was just awkward whenever Palpatine tried to be somewhat easygoing, which he wasn't really that much. Plus, it wasn't really easy for Palpatine whenever Anakin got physically ill, and regurgitated all over Palpatine, intentionally, because it happened every time he had to regurgitate. Truth is, it wasn't just his worry over Padme. It was the fact that this tear in the Force and horrendous attack on the galaxy literally sickened each of them. They could feel the death and destruction, as if literal wounds of the Force were being created in different locations around the galaxy every hour, every day, every minute. Anakin did the least amount of speaking, as a lot of his own development for the past few months was internal. He just sat there and listened to Obi-Wan and Palpatine wax poetic about who knows what. Their conversations were truthfully really interesting, even to Obi-Wan, but they never really liked each other. The entertainment was more than enough for both of them to get along, which is all that really mattered. After months of silently waiting for Dooku to show up, assuming that he had died, he stumbled into their cell in the early hours of the morning. He had a handkerchief in his hand and coughed into it every so often, revealing little droplets of blood every time he did. The Force was killing him, and with his own mortality sitting right in front of him, he decided that with the galaxy mere weeks away from total collapse, he would end his time with the people he brought into Stargon Prime. He looked at each of them, his face wearing marks of aging skin and his somewhat protruding bones. He told them that he regretted so much of his life. Had it been in the service of others, like it would have been had he remained a Jedi, he would have felt some sense of completion. Even in his mind, he wasn't sure if he should have given the reins over to Grievous to create an era of darkness or not, but he was sure of his regret. He had blamed them all, but maybe in the end it was up to him. Blaming his master, his boss, was the easy way, but maybe it wasn't the most factual way. Dooku dedicated his life to the wrong things. He sat there observing their curious expressions. Their faces had changed much since the Battle of Coruscant. They were more mature, but filled with the completion of sorts. All the while he had been lamenting his past, raging to himself about lost time in the pursuit of nothingness, and here at his own end, he found it. Dooku looked to rivals and enemies and didn't see companionship or friendship, but bonding and connection. He looked off and told them that he had made a mistake, many of them actually. His eyes looked to Kenobi. He had many years to meet him before Qui-Gon's death, and didn't. To assume he would join him after never having met was in poor taste. They could have and should have had more connection. To Skywalker, he realized that in reality, as much as he hated to admit it, they were pretty much the same. They were manipulated by the Sith. They were treated right by the Jedi. Maybe it wasn't their preferred method of treatment, but it was, nonetheless, a kind and tough love. Not everything we need comes in the form we want it. Now, Palpatine, the great deceiver, the devil incarnate. There had been many thoughts on Dooku's mind for the past couple months. Chief among them was killing Palpatine in cold blood. A man who was evil from birth, but subjugated into calmness and camaraderie. Though there was something sick about it. If Dooku charged Palpatine's locks, they could kill Anakin and Obi-Wan in the process, and he wasn't sure about wanting them dead or not. All he knew is he felt incomplete. His eyes scanned those who were locked in his cell, and he told them that at the end of his life, he regretted so much. He still did, but instead of ending on that note, instead of denying himself his own peace, he would release them. He had wrongly blamed each of them for his own decisions, because at the end of the day, he held the blade that killed Yaddle. He was in control of the creation of Grievous and the Separatists, and he was the one who killed his best friend, Sifo-Dyas. Yes, Dooku and Anakin were more similar than either cared to admit, and with their release, he wanted their assertion of their life lived to their fullest. Dooku's own cognitive abilities were slipping out of control, but he knew that in his heart, this was the path he wanted to go. Their release would come when he flatlined in the coming hours. Before that, though, he sat with them. The tension that filled the room when they had first woke up after the invisible hand had vanished. They weren't tense, they were warm. Maybe not friends or allies, but they each found attributes of the others that they grew to respect about them, which was a lot for someone even as cruel and evil as Palpatine. When the restraints dropped, Dooku had passed away in his sleep. Before his eyes, the last of his work could be seen. It was the attack on Coruscant, a second strike made by Grievous. It was the largest gathering of forces ever seen, and the galaxy, the one that could watch, watched eagerly to see what befell their galaxy. As the restraints were released from the three captives, they rushed to the door and out of it to grab their weapons, because who knew what would happen next? But as they each retrieved their lightsabers, they could hear the news reports from behind them. It didn't matter what they did. Their elongated rivalry, at least the one between Jedi and Sith, wouldn't change what had been set into stone. Their weapons didn't ignite. Anakin had plenty of reason to kill Palpatine, and well, Palpatine kind of had a reason to hurt and kill the others, but what would he gain from their suffering? And the answer is nothing. Obi-Wan stepped between the two of them, as he redirected their attention towards Coruscant. He looked at Anakin and reminded him of who he was, and then he turned to Palpatine and took a deep breath. Oh boy. A Sith could strike him down now. Surely, Sidious was cruel enough to break their several-month-old bond. So, Obi-Wan stepped towards Palpatine and told him to not fall back into the old ways. They could still right these wrongs. There was still something to be saved. Palpatine's finger hovered over the ignition switch, and he looked into Obi-Wan's eyes. His knuckles creased around the edge of the blade, and he wanted to. But what would he gain? Palpatine placed his lightsaber on his belt and nodded. It was time to go. When they arrived at Coruscant, the Republic defense fleet had been breached. A separatist battle group was crushing through Republic defenses on the surface, which included turbo lasers, anti-aircraft cannons, and even a few artillery pieces added after the first Battle of Coruscant. The Senate building was leveled, and Grievous was directing the rest of the fight from outside the planet's atmosphere. Republic reinforcements continued to pile into the battle, as the Invisible Hand, now fully repaired and even upgraded, fended off attacking Republic Star Destroyers. Even the might of the Republic 1 destroyers couldn't break through the defenses of his dreadnought. Through the smoke of combat, Obi-Wan stood behind Palpatine and Anakin, who held their hands on the control yokes and pressed forward through the firefight. Their eyes landed on the heavily armored battleship. They were here for one thing: revenge. Well, not that, but Sidious was. They were here to end Grievous and free the galaxy. As they approached the massive ship, they were intercepted. Sidious mounted the rear cannons and fired away, using what little he had at his disposal to help Skywalker out. Their ship cruised through the field of combat and hovered over the new Star Destroyer, before dipping down and spinning into the hangar bay after blasting the shields. The shuttle had yet another happy landing, and the three Force wielders abandoned the ship together. They were still wearing their prisoner outfits, but they moved with speed. Even the elder Sidious, who kept pace with the two younger Jedi. When they got to the bridge, they found a dozen Magna Guards and General Grievous. He had been made aware of their infestation on his ship, and he prepared a trap for the Jedi. At the point they entered the bridge, the Invisible Hand was locking onto the Jedi Temple to assist with the ground attack and cripple their morale once more. They had gone through the atmosphere after realizing the Jedi had breached their ship. Sidious, ironically, was the first to tell Grievous to stop what he was doing, but the cannons fired and the temple was leveled. 3 lightsabers ignited, Anakin on the left, Palpatine on the right and Kenobi in the middle. Grievous was a little confused, but he didn't think much of it. He lowered his hand and the Magna Guards moved in. 4 per opponent. There was an immediate issue. Due to the lack of movement for the last several months, they were really tight and their bodies, despite the Force being a guide, weren't ready for this combat. The muscle memory slowly crept back into play, but Anakin, Palpatine, and Obi-Wan were all helping each other out. Kenobi using his defense to take on more guards than not, while Anakin and Sidious used their aggression to take down the guards caught in the fray. Behind them, a group of B-3 battle droids showed up to execute the Jedi, as Grievous called them all. Sidious saw this and threw his hands forward, blasting a wave of electricity that fried the droids in their path before they could get to the bridge. Anakin then lunged at Grievous, but the droid general was ready, igniting a lightsaber and blocking the strike before clocking Anakin in the throat with his metallic fist, forcing Anakin to drop to his knees as he held his lightsaber over his head to defend himself. Sidious closed the door by breaking it, after destroying the droid reinforcements, as Obi-Wan beat back the last 3 Magna Guards. Palpatine turned back and used the Force to launch Grievous off his feet and into the window, where he fell back, giving Anakin a short period of time to get back up and fight. Obi-Wan was shocked with the electrostaff, and as he fell to his knees, Palpatine's blade sped over his head and cut through one of the guards. His quick attacks were incredible, even though they were slow due to not being active. Kenobi got to his feet and cut the last guard down with Palpatine, as they turned over to see Anakin and Grievous fighting on the front of the deck. Skywalker jabbed forward, but his aggression wasn't doing him any favors in the rusty battle. He was clawed in the chest and flung backwards. Sidious and Kenobi lunged in, as the ship rattled from explosions, as another duo of Republic Star Destroyers approached the vessel. Kenobi was thrown into the ground as Palpatine got to his feet before Grievous, jabbing his lightsaber aggressively. Grievous was pushed back but caught himself, igniting another saber and cutting through Palpatine's blade. But the Sith Lord was quick, spinning under a strike and using the Force to ignite a Jedi weapon. He parried a strike, but Grievous' strength shoved him into the glass window, as Obi-Wan jumped up for Grievous to swing back and block him, throwing him across the bridge. Kenobi landed hard, and Skywalker got to his feet to join Palpatine as the bridge continued to rock from side to side. Grievous needed to make a dastardly escape, so he moved to the exit, but the doors were destroyed, so he turned back to see the same opponents, now all gathered up once more. Obi-Wan told Grievous that this was the end of his rule. The ship rocked some more, as the Neimoidian captain told them that the ship had been destabilized. They were going to crash. Grievous wheezed, igniting 2 more lightsabers and deciding that he had to hope he survived the incoming crash. Their blades all collided. Grievous showed off his Jedi hunting prowess as he collided blades with 3 blue lightsabers, his collection having obviously grown since Dooku's handing over of the droid army. Sidious blocked, spinning behind Obi-Wan, who moved in with Form 4, before dashing to the side in Form 3. Palpatine's jab was almost perfect, but Grievous defended himself, as Anakin blasted down on a defense, a strike that would have worked if he was fully active, as he once had been. As they continued using each other to their advantage, the ship started to tilt to the port side, forcing their duel to take them to the other side of the ship. Their strikes and blasts were all useless until another explosion rocked the ship, propelling Grievous into the wall and giving all 3 Jedi the advantage by flinging them towards Grievous. Their blades all passed through him at the same time, as they slammed into the wall and each other, and everything went dark. In the coming hours, light would be revealed when citizen militia would uncover the bridge, hoping to find and kill General Grievous. But instead, they found Kenobi, Skywalker, and Palpatine. The troopers helped the survivors out of the wreckage, as Kenobi made a comment about making it 2 happy landings. Anakin didn't find as much amusement in this as Palpatine did. As they got to the ground and watched the Separatist fleet slowly lose control over another definitive victory at Coruscant, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Palpatine turned towards each other. Skywalker readied his weapon, and Palpatine didn't even notice. His eyes were still on the chaos and destruction around them. When he looked back over, Skywalker ignited his weapon and pointed it forward, asking if Sidious would surrender, and then he looked down, shaking his head. Didn't think so. Obi-Wan followed this with the ignition of his own lightsaber, but Palpatine wasn't going to fight. He told them that he wasn't going to surrender, but he also wasn't going with them, for he now knew the true meaning of oppression, and his taste for inflicting it had vanished. The 2 Jedi looked to each other as Palpatine used the Force to pull a vulture droid from the sky, and use it to vanish off into the distance before the Jedi could do anything to stop him. The Second Battle of Coruscant would, like the first battle, be the turning point of the Clone War. With Grievous' death, the droids were left under the command of their tactical droids, that now without any true leaders, had no true motive. Some of them decided to go and find their own homes, by going out into the Outer Rim and enslaving slavers like the Zygerians or the Hutts. Other droids would continue to fight, sometimes with the galaxy or with other droid factions that grew in the aftermath of Coruscant. For the galaxy that remained, it was a time of chaos, followed by more chaos. The remaining 1,500 or so Jedi would try and make amends and heal the galaxy, but it wasn't possible just like that. Anakin, following everything, would go and return to Padme, who had survived her pregnancy, the war, and the Second Battle of Coruscant. She and he decided to stay far away from politics, combat, or the coming darkness. Despite how gloomy everything looked, they made this decision for their own mental health, and for the protection of their children, one named Leia and the other one named Anakin, because Padme didn't know or believe that her husband would come back to her. It was alright, because the children would thrive with their family away from the chaos. Leia and Junior would have a great life, despite Anakin keeping tabs on Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, who he also saw before they left Coruscant. Even though Ahsoka was not a Jedi the last time they met, she became one in memory of her master who she believed perished. Maul was kept in stasis inside the Jedi Temple. He was just kind of forgotten about when the temple was leveled, so he's not alive anymore. Ahsoka served with the Republic and the Jedi until the end, and she would join Obi-Wan and the last surviving counselors, Mace Windu and Shaak Ti, as they try to restart the Jedi Order. Obi-Wan would have an unnerving experience to tell his friends about, the one where he and 3 others, never meant to be hanging out in the same room together, were forced to understand each other. Palpatine was lost to time, and he wanted to keep it that way, which he would. The Sith to him were dead. His actions would haunt him, but through the Force he would find his own sense of harmony, until the end of his life. The Jedi Order, with the guidance of Mace, Shaak Ti, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka, were in good hands. They would be the guiding light forward, and despite the masters of the 3-member council focused on their order, they also understood the gravity of their position as Jedi. People were hopeless, and it was up to the Jedi to reinstate that hope. In the weirdest way, Dooku had laid the seeds for the beginning of something that would change the galaxy for the better. While he would never see it, it would be through Obi-Wan, the Jedi he should have befriended, and the Jedi he had befriended, Mace Windu, that Dooku would have what he wanted. It would all come to fruition. The natural order of decency and connection and community would take generations to rectify, but the Jedi would restructure the roots that were needed to maintain the galaxy from total collapse, and this was done with the help of clones, droids, and whoever else they could get to aid them. It was a tall task, but the Jedi rose to the occasion. All the while, they moved themselves back to Tython, a longtime home of the Jedi Order, one where they would once again find their own balance. At the end of the next century, an elder Grandmaster, one named Ahsoka Tano, would speak fondly to an order of 2,000 on Tython. She had lived to see the worst and also the best of the galaxy. While she would never be a part of the future that was to come, she wouldn't be forgotten, just like those she hadn't forgotten. The legacy of the Jedi would transcend time, as the Sith once again, but forever now, vanished into the history books of time, never to be resurrected or have influence on the galaxy ever again. Ahsoka's passing of the torch to the next generation would be the decision that would see the Order exceed their mandate and bring community back to the people of the galaxy. And that, my friends, is our story, and special thanks to all the patrons: General Wells, Darth Maelstrom, Ozpin, Darth Vitiate, Seju Jagger, Root36, Hunter Belden, Rosebird, Angel Dust, Alexander Reese, The Beginning and End, Jango Fett Clone, Nick5098, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tib, CC2024, Gallivan Gaming, Tristan, Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Granite D. Bane, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Colin Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlinger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewas 670, Anakin Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny DeGuin, Sense Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yi Gamer, Lord Callie, Youngling Slayer 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin 003, Lord Draken, Fortis Lakes of Star Wars, Erebus, Rex the Wolf, Man with 3 First Names, Darkseid 46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. Force Pointer channel, giveaway is down below. Let's talk about this story. Very interesting video. When I went into writing this, I wanted to do an experimental story. The idea of putting 4 people into a room together at the helm of somebody who's coming to grasp with their own mortality just seemed like really interesting. It's definitely different, and I totally understand if it's not for everybody. I really just wanted to test the experimental side of the story, like see where it would go. You know, there's so much unknown with this story that there's not really a way that you think it would go. When I first started writing this, I was like, oh, Dooku, it'd be the whole thing. But I've kind of done that before, going back. I've done stories where Dooku becomes Emperor after Coruscant, so I wanted to go with a route where he's kind of coming to grasp with mortality and not really sure of how to really accept his life. So there's like a deeper message there that I think could be beneficial, but I also think that the experimental style that would be needed to write something like this would be really just enhancing for uniqueness of story. So I hope you all enjoyed, I really do. This was really different, and it was intended to be that way. It was intended to be experimental and very kind of, George Lucas type, but focus on these characters. So I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.